But the thing is that I kind of realized that that doesn't work.
The clap?
Yeah, the clap, because it's streaming audio, you know? Like,
Yeah.
it's never going to be in sync. Like,
Oh.
the speed of both recordings are different.
Yeah.
So what I need to do is just to adapt it, like, how I can.
Oh,
But, like... No, but
12
like...
frames a second.
The thing is, yeah, we don't need to use clapping. Like, I can do it like manually, and it's not that hard actually.
If this isn't the
You're not gonna
intro for
stop me
the
from
video, I'm
doing
going to
that,
be
though.
slightly disappointed.
Poor idiots
fixing
can't
my
figure
hair
out how to
for fun.
video.
Yeah. And clap. And clap.
To take out the
Yes.
powder.
Yeah. What rhymes with sauce and boss? That's right, it's Ross. And he's not here. So you just get us three idiots, plus the editor who doesn't want to say a word.
Not
His
until
little
he's
icon
paid.
still says muted.
Yeah, he's like, I'm just gonna go on mute now. I'm not. You can't coerce me into saying anything. No, but
No.
this week was an interesting week. It's election week for the United States, which obviously brings up the question: was the election hacked? I mean, I think there's a pretty good case from DEF CON and all of our other very highly sought after conferences where we talk about election hacking, but ultimately there's a lot of extra protections on there. But if you've been following the news, the news has been saying it hasn't been an issue for election day, at least on this this midterm. Which I don't know. I find it's kind of interesting, right? Like when people bring up the whole election gain schemes and all that jazz with all the checks and balances that we have. I've never seen it as really like a viable attack path to taking over a democracy in the United States. I don't know. Let's open it up with that. Like, is really like election day hacking a feasible attack path that could potentially like make it from the box to the vote? Don't all
Man,
speak up
that's
at once. This
That's
is
a
where
hell
we
of a
need Ross.
question. Right? I don't know. I would want to say no. I would say that information operations are a much more viable attack path in order to influence an election than directly hacking the devices and feeding data into them and modifying votes on the device. I feel like if you've managed to get into one system, there's so many different distributed, I don't even know what to call them, brands, operating systems. You're going to have to get into a multitude of them to make it worth your time. Whereas you can buy a little blue check mark on Twitter now and pretend you're so-and-so and do some actual information operations. And that can cause a lot more sway in the way a vote is cast, not counted.
Yeah, I think there's a huge misconception on like the election integrity process, especially with like voting machines, right? Like from the county election board, you know, you have all your machines. They get checked, audited, and ensured that this is the checksum, this is the MD5, this is SHA 256, whatever it may be. They go out to the voting procedure or polls. You know, somebody might come in, they hit their little USB. They're like, "Ooh, got them, suck it, bitches!" And
That's how I
then
do
it
it when I plug in
records.
USBs.
Yeah. Then it's like then it records every vote for George W. Bush Jr. Right? Like, you're like, "Oh man, now I was trying to vote for Dick Cheney, but now I'm getting George Bush." But the moment it goes back to the county board of elections, like it's re-audited. Like they ensure that the checksum has not changed by any means. So like when we talk about election hacking, I think what's interesting is like, is it possible to go from the board, right, go into this area that's supposed to be 2, 3, 4 person accountability, where like it's not just one person with a checkbox going, "Yep, this makes sense," right? There's multiple individuals that are sitting inside that room, all looking and signing off on the exact same thing. But you know, do we think inside this current political bipartitism, or is I don't even know if that's the right word, right? Like for his
Bipartisanism?
partisanism. I don't know. Fucking our
Uh,
shit's weird. But you know what I'm
weird.
trying to say, right? Like with like how polarized each side is, right? Like, is it really feasible to think that we could compromise the board of elections for county and the machines and still like agree upon who the new candidate would be?
It doesn't almost seem. I mean, if you're a Russia or North Korea, it doesn't even seem worth the time and energy really to flip a single county congressional seat when you could be spending the same money and time on, disinformation operations. Because there's also so much that goes into it in terms of like, first of all, there's no real centralized system across states, right? So like each state is dealing with slightly different set of legislatures and systems and voting machines. And then also, you really get into the weeds because let's say Russia says, okay, we're going to add 400,000 votes to this party instead of the other party for this specific congressional seat. Well, what happens if that ends up outpacing the potential number of eligible voters in that county? Like, it actually requires like a fair amount of detailed planning and calculating to make it come across as legitimate also, because, if one party suddenly swings ahead by 500,000 votes and the poll watchers and the people, the county as a whole gets some sense prior to an election, right, as well as pollsters in terms of which way an election is shifting. There's just so many factors that go into it that I think would make it difficult to pull off undetected, and ultimately the goal would be to sow doubt in the system, which they could accomplish, like you said, Alex, through Twitter blue check marks, right?
$8, baby. That's all I got.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean we'll definitely get into that later, right?
Yeah, that's why I tapped on it because we talked about it earlier. Yeah, I mean, there's stuff that I would do differently, right? Like, I wouldn't go in and punch a bunch of bonus numbers. I'd modify every fifth, or I'd find a less intrusive way to do stuff. But even that is going to take so much specialized knowledge for each individual voting system that now we have, say, the county X has this system, county Y has this system, county Z has this other system. You're going to have to figure out how to do that for all of them, let alone each state, each district, whatever. It's an absolutely ridiculous amount of extra work to have to do, where if it were my op, it would be an information operation, not a voting machine attack thing.
Yeah, I think a lot is overblown. Those, CNN shows or whatever news network shows like a 30-second clip from DEF CON of people hacking voting machines, and it's like, sure, is that applicable in a case where you have 100 senators all casting a vote on a single machine? But at a large scale, like this voting machine hacking of some, noobs tearing apart like the circuit board of a voting machine, like, is not.
And it's like a 50-year-old voting machine that somebody got out of a storage unit somewhere, and they're like, yeah, sure, I don't give a shit, break it.
Exactly.
And they're definitely like breaking the seals, right, to get to the JTAG. Like, it's like totally. you obviously see that there's edits going on.
Yeah. The ones that are my favorite ones at DEF CON were the ones that still had the little seal on it that was like, under penalty of law, do not break. And I was like, can I open this? They're like, sure, whatever. So pocket knife comes out, slip the fucking thing, open it up, and I was like, is this like that California mattress thing where you can't remove the tag, but nobody really cares? You know what I mean? Don't tear the tag off your pillow or you're going to jail. I was like, okay, all right, well, technically, I don't know if I'm allowed to do this.
Well, because I know in like our last election, right? Like, granted, there was plenty of drama to go around with our last election, with everything that was said, but like there was a lot of focus on our voting machines, especially like the integrity around them. But like, I think what was mostly thrown out, even by the news media, it was like Okay, sure. Maybe an election machine in Arizona got hacked, right? But that's one county or
One
one
machine.
small
One
area.
machine.
Yeah.
That's why it's more
Um,
interesting these cases of like lottery fraud, right? Because you have a centralized lottery system where potentially there's one pseudo random number generator that's creating the lottery system, and then that is distributed out of that central hub. But the voting system doesn't work quite in the same way. Like the McDonald's monopoly hack famously, or not hack, but where they famously rigged the system. It was just one facility that was printing all the lottery tickets, and they were able to basically improperly access that facility and rig the system that way and make sure that their friends were the ones getting the tickets. That type of scenario doesn't exist in the modern voting system.
Go to this store, buy 400 Big Macs, and you will win.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, you don't even need to purchase though. Remember, you can just write them in
Just
and ask
mail them
for
in
it.
and be like, "Can I have a ticket, please?" Yeah,
Yeah.
I do remember.
Yeah, I
that.
would like 5 tickets, please.
You better
No,
really
I
trust your
mean,
buddy
while
though,
we're
because I could see myself telling you to go to this store and buy 400 Big Macs, and you will win the McDonald's lottery, just because
I
I
would
think you might
probably
do it,
do
and it'd
it.
be funny as hell.
Yeah, I mean, if you told me, I'd probably do it, right? Like, yeah, you know how your parents used to tell you, like, "Oh, if your friend jumped off a bridge, would you do it?" And be like, "Yeah, probably. Sorry, ma." Like, look, it looked really cool. I'm sorry. They were having fun. No, I was trying to remember what the company that Trump was getting up in arms about in the last one, which was the Dominion
Dominion.
voting
Right, yeah.
machines.
Yeah,
That was
where
all
I mean,
buzzed
Dominion
Venezuela's
is
way
pretty
of
Venezuelans.
changing
widespread.
votes.
But yeah, I mean, even then, right? Like the integrity of the software is still checked by multiple people at the board of elections for each individual county. Like to pull something off that widespread, even just statewide, right? I feel would be so difficult. Just the logistics behind it, like to have an operative or operatives, because you need multiple individuals to at least coerce the other individuals in the board of elections to be like, oh yeah, no, this looks good to me. Right, like how much money do you think you'd have to spend to convince somebody like that to just be like, all right, let me look the other way? I mean, considering those people are pretty insane because they're all about politics. Like, let's in fair and free elections, you don't work at a county board of elections because you're like, oh, it seemed like a fucking cool job, right? Like you actually kind of want to be there.
Yeah.
All,
Well, a
all
lot
our
of it, I
listeners
feel
just
like-
tuned out. All our county.
We
Yeah,
have,
everyone
like,
who works
5
at the county
listeners.
board's like,
Yeah,
fuck
just-
these guys.
These guys are assholes. There's so
Man.
much bad, I guess, a poor understanding of how hacking works in a lot of the general populace too. Like I was reading something, I can't remember where exactly it was. I could find it eventually, maybe
Missoula
one day.
Times.
What's that?
Missoula Times.
It was not in the Missoula Times. No, it was some random county in the middle of, I don't know, Heartland, wherever, USA, that was like a really close run on this election. And so people were going to the polls at the end, because of course they were. That's going to make a difference. They were going back to their polling places and they were noticing that there was a blinking red light. And that blinking red light is part of the UPS, the battery backup for the device. And their thought process obviously immediately went to, aha, that's sending signals. This is Wi-Fi connected. And that little blinky red light is sending signals to change votes. And I'm like, bro, that's not how this works. That's not how fucking any of this works. You can't tell me that's not how I would do any of this. As a cybersecurity hacker guy, I'm not going to rely on a blinky red light to send Wi-Fi signals over the 5G net Googles to back to wherever to change. You're never going to know I was there.
The bigger GBs.
It's yeah, dude. I need it in white.
Yeah.
Like,
I missed that meme.
that's not even like a good indicator to anybody that something nefarious or malicious is going on. But there's such a poor understanding of how hacking works that they're like, blinky red light, bad thing, problem. Hackers! Like,
Russia
not what
their
that
own
means.
election systems. They're just doing it through disinformation and propaganda. Like
just dump them fucks out into the tundra.
Yeah, like, you don't agree with Putin? Okay, well, here's a Serbia prison camp for you. And there we lost all our Russian listeners.
Down to 2
that's-
now.
Oh no. Hi,
only
Mom.
the Ukrainian boys listen now.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I think you actually brought up a really good point, right? With the lack of understanding of how hacking works. But I think we probably would want to take it one step further and argue that it may not even be necessarily like the lack of understanding of how hacking works, but more so the lack of trust in today's political system, especially in the United States, right? Like, I mean, it's no doubt, right? We're not a political show, but it's no doubt there's a lot of like distrust amongst both sides of the line, and I feel like
That's
that in
pretty
itself,
nonpartisan, fair statement.
yeah. But I feel like that in itself causes a lot of just fill in the blanks, right? Like it's the idea behind a lot of conspiracy theories that get built. It's like, oh, we never made it to the moon because there's no way I could believe we made it to the moon, right? Rocket ships don't have enough power to escape this flat Earth of ours. I feel
Birds
like
aren't real.
birds aren't real. Have you
I
ever
mean,
seen
the
a pigeon,
people-
like a baby
Have you ever
pigeon?
seen a
thing-
baby pigeon? No, you haven't. There's a reason.
I mean, in some sense, it's not surprising at all that people think the election is being hacked, because the same people think that, like, Christopher Walken is president and wearing a mask of, of Joe Biden, Like, it's the same populace that's coming up with the same theories,
Yeah, and I mean it's not far fetched, right? Like every nation out there, or developed nation, I should say, has meddled in others' elections for the sake of political gain for their own favor. I mean, we have it in our own history books of the CIA trying to screw with so many Latin American countries, right? And successfully
to.
screwing with a lot of
Yeah,
Latin
there you
American
go.
countries, right? Like my own family was affected by it in Chile, right? So it's like we've seen this happen time and time again, but in the past, it was a little bit easier to rig elections in a sense, right? Because it's like it's all paper based. You could hide behind the cover of certain things. I'm not to say that it's like easy to rig or easier to rig paper based, but if you hide behind a few what's the charades
Facades?
English is difficult. Mossad? Wait, what?
No,
Uh,
facade. Facade.
Facade. Yeah. Facades. Mossad? Where? No. So you hide behind a few facades and God, now I want to say Mossad every fucking time. Thanks.
That was you.
And you can just like, yeah, I know. You can. What was I even trying to fucking say? God, ADHD sucks. I was trying to get to a point where it's just like easier to hide
Paper
back in the day
ballots.
because there's not a whole lot of people like
Hiding behind facades
digging
of
into
something.
things.
Well,
Today
that's why
we're
there's
so
theories
connected.
of people shredding ballots and hurling them into the bin behind like the voting place, right? Like that's sort of the biggest election hacking theory there is, right? People just sort of shredding paper ballots.
And I mean, like, don't get me wrong, right? Like, taking into consideration voting rigging and manipulation of our elections is huge, right? And every allegation should at least be investigated into. But quite frankly, like the amount of times that they're actually true, it's very, very rare, right? And I mean, funny enough, in 2020, the last election, the only voter fraud that was convicted on was a guy here in North Carolina,
Wasn't that the
like a Republican House.
Yeah, that was like going house to house
runner.
picking up ballots and then just not like.
Yeah, it was like
Well, I'll
he was
take care
going
of it
for
for
like
you, bro.
yeah, he was going for like the state senate. Like it's not even that important of a fucking job, right? Like I mean, I don't
Well,
care if you're a
kid dimed him
politician
out,
and you're
too.
listening, but like let's be real here. Like your job's worthless. But like like why rig that? Like that's what you're gonna go and get in trouble for. Like what's the point? Especially considering like we've seen that through Russian meddling that like misinformation and propaganda is so much more of an effective tool at manipulating elections. I mean,
Yeah, I think
we knew.
there's a much longer episode that can be done about that, into the psychology of why people are unwilling to lose. Yeah. And then there's the constant like millennials can't lose your participation trophies, and I'm like, I didn't decide to get a participation trophy, dude. That was you being unable to watch your child lose. You couldn't let the kid lose. You can't lose your election. You can't watch me fail. I'm gonna fall. I'm gonna fail. My kids fall all the time. One fell 5 minutes ago and hit his head on the floor. It's what they do. Get up. Get over it. But before I get completely wound up about that, maybe that's a different topic for a different day.
I don't know. I think it kind of falls into the same point, though, right? Like we fully knew that the Russians were meddling in our election, right? Like it was being reported by both sides of the news, right? Whether it was Fox News or MSNBC, everybody was like, "Well, the Russian bots are at it again on Facebook. Like, get Mark Zuckerberg." Right?
Yeah, but then that rolls back to that election meddling was election meddling, not voting machine tampering, right? That was misinformation, disinformation, info ops, right? That is, I think, documented and verified, and we're like, yeah, that happened. But there's a confusion or a conflation there between that and a voting system has a blinking light, and obviously it's been hacked and it's changing votes.
And we'll get to this when we talk about the blue check marks, but that's why it's been so concerning this past week, seeing the entire content moderation staff of Meta and Twitter either being laid off or just walking out the door, because in many ways those are more of the checks and balances ensuring our election security than the machine down at your county school, right?
Yeah. I do like, though, that the news has been really shit about reporting that there hasn't been any actual like polling exploitation, right? Like their wording verbatim was that the U.S. officials say there hasn't been any evidence of significant interference from hacking groups. As it's like, bro, there hasn't been any interference inside the at least to my knowledge, right? From everything I've seen through Telegram and my own threat intel that I do on my my off time. Like I haven't seen anything where people are boasting about getting into an election, right?
Yeah, I think it's more of an optics thing. It's just like if the county board of elections website gets DDoSed for 7 minutes, like, oh, maybe a voter didn't know where to go vote, and then that materially affects the outcome of some vote. So they just can't say there's been zero evidence, because across all the counties and states, there's probably some website that was down.
Something has happened.
Exactly.
Right, and so they can't say there's been no evidence, but nothing significant. Right? Yeah, somebody got DDoSed for 5 minutes. Fuck.
Sure.
Okay.
I mean, you still had to sit in a line for an hour and a half to go vote, right? Like, voting lines were still shit pretty much everywhere. Well, you may not have in one thing, because you guys have like 8 cows for every 1 human being.
It's 5.
All right. Well, it's still pretty. I guess if we're rounding down.
I have an interesting follow-up question for you guys, because it's long been talked about. We live in this modern technological age, but we're still sending in paper ballots and going down to our county board of elections. Do you think it would instill more trust if there was one single central authority and every American voted on their phone or on their laptop and that was it?
No, I think that's why it's so important for, like, when the federal government was talking about putting poll watchers down in Florida, and Florida was like, no, you won't. On one end of the spectrum, right? I don't agree with like having armed individuals anywhere near a polling location, right? And having a federal watcher is somewhat helpful in ensuring that we have a free and open election. But the process of the United States of allowing states to run their own individual elections allows us to ensure that they're actually more free, right? Like, sure, we have to ensure that our Secretary of States for each individual state is not going to say that the elections are rigged just because their party didn't win. But, on the flip side, it prevents the federal government, at least on the United States side, from overreaching and causing situations similar to like Russia or China, where all of a sudden it's like they have one centralized voting system, and there's nothing going to stop Papa Putin from getting his 17th reelection,
Yeah.
right? Or
I
Winnie
think-
the Pooh from getting his unlimited time
Yeah.
in service.
That's done. I think allowing the states to have their own systems in place also, I don't have a better way to put it, but it allows for more, I guess, cultural compliance, right? Here, we would lose our fucking minds if there were armed National Guard watching the polling places. Not happening. Not here. Some places might tolerate that. You know, it might be more normal because you're in so much more population dense area in places like New York, LA, Chicago to have people there while you're at the polling place. It's a big country. There's a lot of different little microcultures kicking around, and I don't think in these like big sprawling rural places that is not going to be compliant with the local culture of, yeah, fuck off, leave me alone. Don't look over my shoulder, don't bother me, don't talk to me. Like, we can be cool over there. So allowing the states to have their own systems allows us to have the freedoms to do that. Because what would happen here is people would stop voting. I'm not going to go to a polling place where there's people standing over my shoulder. I'm not going to do it.
I mean, if you want to look at the statistics, half the people don't vote anyways, but
Right.
No,
okay.
I
So
think
it'd
that's
be
kinda the-
75% of people stopping, right?
yeah. No, I think that's the argument for why you don't want like Dominion in everyone in every state, right? Like,
No, you
sure, it's
distribute
great
it.
for Dominion's business, but to have a distributed ecosystem of different voting machines and different voting processes, right, does ensure that the election can't be rigged. As much
Or
as
it's
we want to say.
immensely harder to do so, right? And that comes
Yeah.
back to I'd have to have a process for Dominion. I'd have to have a process for this machine, this firmware device on this machine, this firmware version on that firmware on that machine. Okay, well, this one's got a different version, so now I have to have a different version of this exploit. It's not
It's like hacking
viable.
phones. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just not viable to have that many exploits, rootkits, whatever you have to do on that many different platforms. So I don't think having a single centralized system is a good idea because that makes my target set much smaller, which makes my focus much higher.
My dog just bursted through the door. This dude learned how to open up this door to this office recently, and now he just like smacks his head into it and just knocks it open. Like, what is wrong with you? Don't
You
look at me
haven't
like
sent him
that.
to astronaut camp.
Yeah. You'll never be an astronaut, Bo. I'm sorry. You're too hyper, dude. They can't deal with that on the ISS. But no, I mean, I'm pretty sure this is a topic that we could get really in depth into, and you know, sadly, the elections are always going to be very, very polarized because everyone has their own opinion in politics and all that jazz. So it's a hard thing to tiptoe around, but I think that, you know, the general way of looking at this is, you know, there is no evidence of like being able to actually hack a polling station and have it go all the way to the point where it would be counted as word of law, right? Like, there's just too many parties that you have to manipulate, you have to coerce into agreeing to. That, I mean, you'd be talking like a full blown like coup, right? Like, which I don't know, maybe in the United States it's not too far fetched, but
Yet another conversation for another day.
Yeah. I want to hope that I don't have to drive to like Montana on a Tuesday afternoon out of nowhere just to like avoid all this BS. So, no,
Yeah.
I think though that's yeah, I kind of want to transition us away from the scariness of politics and move into the hilarity of what is known as Twitter.
Oh, you're not going to give a word to our sponsor, PlexTrack. Do you have penetration test reports?
PlexTrack.
Hey,
Damn,
we have a sponsor.
you want to pay me?
Is this why you're wearing the shirt? Is this a boost of
I just did not change before. Like, I got up this morning. I put on this shirt. I don't know. Maybe that is kind of a sponsor. Boise Dan, if you ever watch this, hit me up. We'll take $20 for the editor. How about that?
I
Please.
put a jacket on because like 40% of my t-shirts are stuff I got from conferences. And I'm like,
Yeah.
no, my socks, man, I don't even bring t-shirts and socks to conferences anymore. I pick them shits up off the floor before I get there.
Yeah, Boise, their CEO is he's a super cool dude, and I've hung out with him a few times. And the last time I hung out with him, he got me this super sweet trucker hat. So, yeah, I guess we're Plex Track sponsors now.
I don't think we can legally say that, actually.
No, I don't think we can. No, I mean, but yeah, no, they have some pretty cool swag.
If anything, they'll be so disturbed by the idea of Dovey taking his shirt off live on camera that they'll pay him to keep it on.
No, leave that shit on.
Yeah, I've.
Right. What's our next?
Our next topic.
We've tried to segue into it 3 times and we've failed every time.
That's just ADHD, man. That's the.
Sorry, I brought up our not sponsor. That was my bad.
Not sponsor. You know who should sponsor us?
God damn it, David.
Sierra Nevada Brewery. All I'm saying is, yo, homie, hit me up. I want some of that Celebration Ale and Hershey's chocolate because I could use some sweets right now. No, we were going to talk about Twitter, the muskiness of Twitter.
That was good. That was impressive.
Yeah, when we don't have Ross the Sauce Boss, we got to come up with different rhymes or innuendos. This one's kind of cool, I think, just because it's going to showcase some very interesting transitions in the InfoSec world. I mean, you mentioned it a little earlier ago too, Bobby, with Meta, their content moderation staff just bailing. But on that same note of 13% of most of these big tech companies are releasing people, Twitter decided to let go its individuals who had the least amount of code commits.
Least number of lines written, dude. What a great metric.
What a brilliant metric, because what is the hardest thing to write? Security shit.
Security and reliability.
Yeah. So I'm going to be pretty forward. I think we're going to see an uptick in bug bounties for Twitter coming up here shortly.
Nah.
I don't think they're going to get paid. I think we're just going to see a bunch of upticks in bug bounties. Like, people are going to be like, oh, hey, by the way, did you guys see that you could use Twitter as a C2 now?
Did you see they're running a dev build in production? Like, if you open console and go through Twitter's site, it's like pinging like internal resources and files and images.
No, I didn't see that. That's
wait, no shit.
Yeah,
I'm going into it right now. What? Open up in DevTools, baby.
On the TikTok.
Dude, come on. How do you fuck this up so bad?
You move too fast. And you don't talk to your security and reliability people, and you don't get things tested. You just make the changes right now because somebody told you had to make them right now. Well, now you can't. Now, immediately starting as of this second, you can no longer change your name if you're verified. That change does not. That wasn't ready. That was a slapdick spur of the moment change, and it got deployed without any sort of verification. So yeah, it's gonna be full of dumb shit.
Eli Lilly stock tanked today because someone made a fake Eli Lilly account so that insulin is free.
$6 billion.
I mean, that's just bananas.
Yeah, it hit hard.
Fun fact, unrelated to Twitter, but I just realized this looking at the inspector. If you have Grammarly desktop, it injects HTML code into your pages. So could be an attack vector. Just throwing it out. No, but I think there's been a lot of these like really weird changes coming out of Twitter that are like, 1 minute they're saying something, then the next minute they're like, oh, never mind, right? Like like, yeah, okay, we're changing the blue check mark to $8 a month. Like, all right, you got to make revenue. I get you. Whatever, dude. Do your thing. But then to combat the impersonation situation, they were like, oh, we're going to put official on everyone who's actually verified. And then they were like, wait, no, we're not. Like, literally, like 8 hours later, the same dude was like, yeah, no, never mind. Yeah, we're not doing that. It's like, yeah.
I mean, Elon Musk sent out an email to the staff saying you all need to be in the office tomorrow, effective immediately. And like, people don't even live in the city. What do you mean effective immediately? What am I supposed to do? Fly in tomorrow?
Dude, that just means that I have a better place for people to work than Twitter. Like, I'm a better employer. No, I mean, I think that one, the whole you got to come in, no more outside the office thing. It's an old mentality, and I don't necessarily agree with it. I kind of do appreciate the hybrid model, even though I'm an extrovert and I like seeing people. But that in itself wasn't too surprising coming from a guy who's like owns a rocket ship company that launches his car company's cars into space. Like, do we really have to be surprised by that? Like, the dude literally shot his fucking car into space. Him telling people to come into the office was the least surprising of the changes that came down from this, in my opinion.
That's fair. Yeah.
The whole story from a high level is really crazy if you think about it. Like, you have this like Dr. Evil like figure says he wants to buy the social media platform, decides he's going to pay $44 billion for it, which no one agrees is how much it's worth. And he's
for
like,
a platform that has never made money, period, ever,
money.
Full stop.
Then he
didn't they have 2 quarters of profitability? I'm pretty sure they had 2 quarters total.
Yeah. Then he decides, oh shit, it's not worth $44 billion. I want out of this. It goes to a court in Delaware, of course. Then he's like, oh shit, I have who knows what skeletons I have in my closet. I don't want to go through discovery in federal court. Okay, I'll just buy it for $44 billion.
Well, he tried to back out of it when they wouldn't give him a bunch of the information he wanted to about banned accounts, right? They were like, no, you don't own this yet. You can't have that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he was like, well, if I'm not getting that, I'm leaving.
Right.
And they're like, no, you already signed that shit, bro. That's not how this is going to work.
And now he's in this situation where he's paying $1 billion in interest every year just to float this loan that allowed him to buy this thing that makes no money. So his solution to that is like, let's just charge everyone $8 a month. Like, the numbers don't even add up of charging everyone $8 a month. That's not going to fill the hole of the $1 billion a year in interest.
450 odd years to pay that off without interest. I mean, if the current verified accounts paid him $8 a month, it would still take 456 years, I think I read, to pay it off if you're not counting interest on the loan. And for anybody that's bought a house, that means it's going to take about 7,000 years to actually pay it off, because that's how loans and interest works.
Let's torpedo the main source of revenue that Twitter does have, which is the advertising. It's gone from 75% to zero overnight.
Yeah. Dude, so many people walked away from Twitter.
Big time.
And then he bitched about it, actually, which I thought was kind of funny. No, I mean, I see Twitter is a lot like Facebook, right? We may no longer really use it, but it's not fucking going anywhere. It's like herpes. It's there for life. I mean, MySpace is still around, right? Like, it might not be used by people. It's still fucking around. Go to MySpace. You can't edit the HTML anymore, but you can still go there.
No, Facebook is far more mature and well managed of a company. Like, people like to give Mark Zuckerberg shit, but like, he has built a machine of a company with Sheryl Sandberg by his side. I mean, Jack Dorsey was always kind of a suspect founder to CEO, and like we talked about, it never really reached profitability to begin with, you know?
For sure, but I mean, even with that, right? Like, this is just something that's not going away. Like, even though Facebook has made profit from selling personal information to various companies and government agencies, Twitter is no different, right? Like, they still make funds. Like, they're still paying bills, because if they weren't, they wouldn't be here, right? They wouldn't have an internet connection. So there is definitely some ability there to make money. It might not be the best decision, but I'm also not a financial advisor, so don't listen to me on whether you should spend $44 billion on a website.
As
I
a
barely wanna
non-professional,
spend-
I would recommend no one buy Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, I spent $10 on itsnotmalicious.com. Like that's about
Money
as
well
much as I'm
spent.
willing. Yeah. Right? Like I'm not willing to pay more than like $15 for a domain name. So
Well, I think that's an interesting
Um,
conversation. Do we think Twitter? My personal opinion is I think Twitter is going to be gone in 6 to 12 months. I mean,
I
we
think
saw
it'll
it with,
plummet.
with Vine.
It'll fall
with-
in value to be about $45. Somebody else will buy it and then co-opt it into their own product, and it'll become part of some
or
other
like
social media
AOL,
platform.
with Yahoo, with Verizon Media, with Apollo Group.
It'll just get swallowed up by something bigger and bigger and bigger until here you can send 144 character messages on this application, and they're available online over here. And they're just somebody's just going to eat
Microsoft's
that
gonna
code
buy it.
base. Yeah, basically,
Yeah.
somebody's going to eat that code base and scavenge it
Yeah.
for parts for dirt cheap.
Microsoft will buy it, they'll integrate it into Microsoft Teams, and then we'll have another issue on our hands. Like could you imagine?
Tweeter shell.
Hey man, we now integrated ourselves into Twitter. So all of your business decisions are actually getting uploaded to the cloud at
they're
255
verified.
characters. Yeah,
Listen,
but you got to
we've
pay
given,
$8.
we've given Microsoft a lot of flack on this show, but they did have a smart acquisition with LinkedIn. That was a wise purchase that they made.
I mean, LinkedIn is slowly turning into a cesspool. Let's be real, but I mean, still, like
was a
the
cool
fact that
idea,
it
though.
holds itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like LinkedIn, right? Like, I feel like the way of presenting yourself as a professional to others is really a great kind of separation from the day to day spool of shit that you get from like Facebook or from Twitter, right? Like, if I go on Twitter,
MySpace.
like,
when W's
my
on
God, yeah.
MySpace on his lunch break, he's just
Yo,
Gee.
my SoundCloud.
yo, man, hit up my SoundCloud, yo.
I think LinkedIn would maintain a lot better if it weren't slowly falling into another Facebook. Like if it were just business, employment, work-related stuff, it has a lot more legs than like I'm posting pictures of my kids and my family, and this is a vacation I went on. # work break. No, it's not what it's for. Stop it.
I do think that, yeah, the idea of Twitter initially was pretty cool, right? Like, but social media is so driven by the ability to influence others, right? I mean, that's why we have a whole job now that we call people influencers. You know, they ain't influencing jack shit except for getting stuff for free for looking pretty. Let's be real, right? And Twitter just doesn't have that capability of continuous influenceability, for making up a word here, right? Like, with Instagram, you can pretty much do anything with a thirst trap, right? Like, hey, I can write a super long thing on here as long as I got a thirst trap picture, somebody's gonna listen to me. Twitter, like, I see Dave Kennedy throwing like axes with his buddy, right? Like, okay, hey, cool shit, Dave. When are you gonna invite me to go do some stuff with you? You know, like I'd like to throw some axes, but like there's no real like influence in there, right? We're not
Influenced
swaying
by the
elections
masses.
through Twitter. Yeah. So like, you know, an advantage that you get from like Facebook and whatnot, and the reason why it was so good at the infosec potential, was you could just buy ad space and start manipulating masses because you have large text capability, right? You can write out full on articles into Twitter and all that jazz. You're not leaving the site to go, or not Twitter, sorry, Facebook. You're not
Facebook.
leaving the site to go get your misinformation. With Twitter, like you get like 255 characters, and I think that's pretty hard for Russia to try to convince you to vote for somebody else, right?
Although
Like,
Trump would argue it's highly effective, but yeah.
I mean, that's why they built Truth Social, though, right? Like, only for that to get taken down by AWS. Yeah,
It's back up.
they're on their own.
Parler.
Yeah, Parler, True Social, they're all on their
What's
own
the new
like
Twitter?
provider.
Mastodon. What's the new one that everyone's migrating to in InfoSec?
Oh yeah, I saw Brian Krebs got banned from it.
The new one that
Yeah.
people are already getting kicked off of. Fuck you.
Yeah, he's like, oh, that lasted all of 45 minutes. Yeah, Mastodon,
Mastodon.
Mastodon, and it's selling itself as a uncentralized social media, which to me really just sounds like another like True Social, right? Like, let's be real here. It really does sound like there's just like, if you're gonna slightly disagree with our political views, we're still gonna ban you. Um, I I don't know. Have you guys have you signed up for it yet, Bobby?
I have not. I mean, I'm already seeing people complain like, "Oh, the UI isn't good." It's like, "Oh, really? It's not as good as a Fortune 500 publicly traded company with thousands of UI engineers." This is shock of the century. But yeah, no. I mean,
Yeah.
it's always until there's enough momentum or mass in one direction that shows it has the sticking power. It seems like not worth my time to start posting on Mastodon.
Right? Or it's like, what's going to be the next thing to overthrow YouTube? VMO, and you're like, that shit's been around forever, and it's still not even close. I think when we start getting up in arms about this, yeah, a lot of people hate on Twitter now because they just hate on Elon, and that's fine. You're entitled to your views, but ultimately, like, the platform's probably not going away. It's I would argue that this platform is going to be around for a while. It's gonna stay in the musky man's hands, and we're probably going to see a decline in quality initially, maybe even security. I would be very interested to see on what the next breach from Twitter would look like, right? Because there is still a lot of PII within Twitter, right? Or there's a lot of what do they call it? Identifiers for individuals, just based off of like conversational patterns and posting patterns, right? So there's a lot of
Yeah,
ways
and
to
your geolocation, all that.
Right.
It's
Yeah. So I mean, the potential at a nation state level is huge. Um, and I'd be very interested to see how like a threat actor would take that information and potentially leverage it in return of or return for money.
I think the
'Cause,
good
I mean,
thing
I don't.
is. No, go ahead, David.
Oh no, I was going to say I don't really use the platform all that much, but I mean,
Sure.
even the stuff that I do, I know could identify me very, very easily, not just from my hair, but from my speaking patterns and my meme usage.
I do think one positive from the situation is the infosec community is very good at continuing discourse, no matter the platform, whether it be at conferences or pretty platform agnostic. Like there's not a big community of accountants that are chatting in Discord servers about accounting, but infosec I think will continue that discourse whether Twitter is the platform or not.
Yeah. Your ability to find and communicate with people that have similar interests, I think is pretty high. Partly because it's the world that we live in anyway. I'm sitting in front of this machine. I'm using Discord to play games with my buddies. Oh, there's a Discord server for this thing? No problem. It's easy. It's part of what I do anyway. I get my information from Twitter? Sure, I'll get Twitter. I get my information from Mastodon? Whatever. I'll go there, grab that. It's fine. So it's just a little bit more fluid for people that already live in that environment because I'm
Does
sitting in front of
Mastodon have channels? Should we start a cyber idiots Mastodon and just
I don't,
see what it's about?
weren't we
I don't
talking
know, but
about
they
doing
have
a
they
Twitter
have
for
an
the
app.
channel?
I think the editor was talking about doing one or an Instagram. Or,
No,
I
TikTok.
don't know what we
TikTok
post.
was the
Oh, TikToks.
TikTok.
We got to get all the kids involved into learning how to hack.
I mean, the three of us
Um,
have been on Musically for years. We're just looking to transition our traditional content to more of the.
Yo, didn't you know that APT Big Daddy was originally like a dubstep artist? Like, come on, bro. I'm on SoundCloud. Check me out. Um, no, I think you're right. About InfoSec. Wherever we go, we're just going to be we're going to be able to use it. The beauty of the way I like to look at InfoSec is we're a lot like MOBA players, right? League of Legends or Dota. We're just a toxic fucking community that loves to hate on ourselves anywhere we go. And it doesn't matter if we're using Mastodon, Facebook, MySpace. I mean, shoot, you can even go on LinkedIn. You still see some toxic people inside there. Like they're like, this is fucking dumb, right? And you're like, bro, it's literally gift shell. Like, calm down. Like, this is some cool shit. There's always gonna be somebody who's complaining, and just from having that, like, we as InfoSec personnel or people, we can keep like companies alive just off of that shit. And I'm not trying to like say like we're important. I'm just saying we use our platforms for very, very stupid stuff. And we're definitely not the only group of professionals that does that, for sure. I don't think there's many you're right. I don't think there's many accounting discords out there that are like, man, this tax law is fucking stupid. You're like,
all the
I don't
tax
know about that.
lawyers just tuned out. We're losing audience members right and left.
We've lost the Russians,
The
we've
Russians,
lost
the
the
tax
political
lawyers, yeah.
science, the tax lawyers, the CPAs.
Man.
Who can we lose next? Crew chiefs. Planes suck. Yeah, no, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I really want to see where it gets to in a security perspective, considering that that's the people who are exiting social media platforms right now. The content moderation, the security teams. I mean, there's a ton of jobs on LinkedIn right now for social media companies for security personnel because they just don't have any anymore.
That's another.
Yeah, but the trust level there is so low. Like, why would I join that company when I know you're gonna shit can me in 3 months? Why? Why would I do that? You gotta think I'm out of my fucking mind.
The people that are leaving Twitter and Meta, like, they're talented folks. They're gonna go make another more viable company more secure. Like, that's a positive in some sense, right?
Yeah. I don't think they'll get paid the same amount though.
Sure.
Not initially, yeah.
I've definitely heard of like developers getting hired for like Meta and other social media companies for like $200,000 right out of college, and you're like, who the fuck's paying you this much money?
Oh,
like,
way
why?
more than that. People who go work from like leave Ivy League schools and go work for Jane Street and HRT and all those quant firms, they're making 400, 500 first year out of school.
Yeah, but like, why? You guys are dumb. Like, I don't mean to be mean, but you guys are dumb. Like, we pen test your programs. The guy who just graduated high school is able to like hack your shit. And we're paying these people a ton of money. That's a whole different conversation. Let me not get into that one. But yeah, I mean, we're coming up on 40 or 50 minutes. I don't know when we started recording or actually hitting the play button, but
after I apply my makeup and start.
Yeah, after we saw your sweet screen.
Yeah.
But yeah, I figure it's probably a good time to go around the horn. Any last call outs on this Twitter or political fiascos of the last 2 weeks that we want to shout out to?
Can I say something?
Oh, there's a ghost. Yeah.
Like maybe it's a dumb assumption, but right now it's like a really good time to start a new social network, maybe.
Here live, we are cyberidiots.com.
Oh, you guys saw that Discord is now enterprise, right?
Really?
Yeah, they have an enterprise capability.
God.
So, yeah, you want to integrate Discord into your SAML? Like, you can. No,
All right.
I think the problem with social media in general is that it doesn't matter what we create. It's going to get used and abused in a way that you don't want it to be, right? The Trumpers figured that out with True Social, right? They were like, we're going to make our own disorganized thing. And then all of a sudden the KKK took it over. And they were like, wait a second. I just wanted to be able to complain in secret, not complain in public. So it's like, even if we started something new, even with the idea of it being like an InfoSec social media or something in that sense, like, it's going to get used, abused. It's still going to find its way into the hands of individuals who can pay the $44 million to purchase something, and then they're just going to fuck it up. And then you have to worry about what is the price of everybody who uses it, right? Because while it might seem funny and entertaining to talk shit about Twitter, it could potentially be one of the scariest hacks of the decade. if it ends up getting exploited, right? With the amount of data that is collected there, like there is a lot of stuff that could potentially backfire and really cause heartache and pain for a lot of individuals to have targeted propaganda spewed at them. Because I mean, ultimately, right? Like we're in an information age. We don't have to worry about just going onto TV and putting one little political ad out there. Instead, we can do targeted ads, and that can be used pretty nefariously, especially with the information that somebody could gather from Twitter. So that's what I'll say on that one. I like the idea editor from behind the curtain. Bobby, you're to my right, so let me pass it over to you. What else you got? What's any closing remarks, statements?
I mean, I think that regardless of what happens with Twitter, it'll be a really interesting case study of what happens if you take a large Fortune 500 company and you remove its CISO and its head of privacy and security, and its head of infrastructure security, and its head of content moderation. What if you just remove all that from the equation? What will then happen to that company and to the company's data? And I think it'll be a learning lesson for the general public. So I mean, if there's any positive to take from it, it's an interesting case study for the future, and maybe it'll bring security more to the forefront once people realize what happens when you kind of remove those pieces from the equation. So
that'd be kind of cool. We think security first.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll happen, but I appreciate the thought. Alex, what do you got?
I got not a whole lot more than that. I'm kind of looking forward to see what happens to Twitter. I would say with, but I think it's going to be a 2. Other than that, I know we're not going to get this out today, but it's Veterans Day, so I hope everybody called their buddies, your battle buddies, your wingmen, your shipmates, whatever the fuck Marines call each other.
Crayon
check on
eaters.
your fellow crayon eaters. Yeah, check on your people. We love yous. I know it's late. Do it anyway.
Yeah, no, good point. Happy Veterans Day to all of our veterans out there. Unless you fought against the United States, then we're watching you. No, I'm kidding. But
more viewers
I don't have time for that
out.
shit.
Yeah, we just lost our one sponsor, Leon.
All
who's
our foreign fighters have just dropped.
Well, that's it. Wrap it up, boys. This podcast is over.
All right. Yep. This is the part where we just stare at the screen, right? And we just go, "Is it over yet?"